Hey, everybody. Welcome to another awesome session from our Open Campus program. Today, we've got Enrique here, and he is going to be walking you through how to build a Rockstar project portfolio, which is one of the most important things that you need to do if you want to get a data analyst job or advance quickly. So you'll get some great advice from Enrique here today. Reminder to folks who haven't been on other sessions, this is part of our Open Campus week. This week, we have 3 days of live sessions. They're all totally free. I'll post a link in the chat so that you guys can see the rest of the sessions. Register. You'll be able to see the sessions that we've had earlier today and yesterday as well. Today, we have Enrique now, and we've got one more session coming up. I think Chris is actually going to need a substitute. I think we're going to have Aaron Perry walking you through acing the analyst interview. Chris is pretty under the weather, but that'll be kind of game time. And then tomorrow we'll have Chris walking you through common analytics roles. So talking about whether you should be a data analyst, a data scientist, a data engineer, who's a good fit for each of those. We'll have Kristen coming in, who's got just an amazing background, really interesting. She was a data analyst with me about over a decade ago. She switched into data science, machine learning. She runs her own consulting practice. She's been an author, a speaker. So really, really interesting, inspiring person to hear from. Then we'll have Alice, who through her work as a university professor has helped over 400 students with their data projects, and she's going to be giving her lessons that she's learned there. And then finally, I'll close out tomorrow with a step-by-step learning guide that you guys can use to help launch your career. Yesterday, we had another panel of sessions. Enrique and I did Excel and SQL. Aaron covered Power BI fundamentals. Chris Brule talked about Python, and Chris Dutton talked about data visualization. So all of those sessions are up live. They're on demand for anybody. They're free. I'll give you a link in the chat in a minute. So go and take a look at those. And just make sure you go to mavenanalytics.io. This week, we are letting everybody use our entire course library for free through the end of October 31st. So we're on day 2 of 7 there. We hope people will take advantage of it and really milk that for all it's worth. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Enrique, and maybe it'd be great to talk about why you think having a portfolio is such an important thing for an analyst, and then we'll let you get into the meat of what you're talking about today.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, John. I think, portfolios are a hot topic. I think you see it all over the place these days. You see it on LinkedIn. So I think it's clear to anyone that's trying to be an analyst that having a portfolio is going to be your strongest asset, but I don't think there's really a clear framework to getting there, so and it's definitely no easy task to put it together. So I think my goal here is just help you guys start creating quality projects for a captivating portfolio to get that one step closer to landing that data dream job. So I want to share my screen here. Oh, that's not it. And let's kick off with the essential. I think it's almost up. So why do you need a project portfolio? You may have seen this already, but I want to give my take on the importance. And I think let's just start with the obvious. It's to prove that you actually have the skills for the job, right? And I think you would never, hire a designer. You would never hire an architect without looking at their work. I'm in the process of planning my wedding. You better bet I looked at tons of photographers before, hiring the right one. So why would it be any different with an analyst, right? So I think resumes and LinkedIn profiles that I think everyone has these days do a great job and help telling, your potential employers about your skills. But portfolios really do allow you to show them what you are capable of. These days, I think in the era of ChatGPT, where just a sentence can get you a full resume together, hey, I'm applying for this job. Can you help me put something together? I can kind of get away with saying that I know this, this, and that, and this is kind of my experience. And all of a sudden, you've got this amazing professional looking resume that you had no hand in creating, right? And sorry to say for now, but ChatGPT can't help you put your entire portfolio together like you can your resume. So this is really just going to take you one step closer to differentiating yourself from the competition. So what things should a great project portfolio highlight? Well, number one, and this is unavoidable, your technical proficiency, right? Especially in the space of data analytics. These are the main things that people put on their resume, 5 stars in Excel, 4 in Power BI maybe, but the portfolio really can help show through projects that you have the proficiency to put things together because the employers can literally see them. So that's step number one. But steps number 2 and 3, and the other 2 things are strategic thinking and communication skills. And this is something that's a lot harder to express through LinkedIn or through a resume. Communication skills maybe, but strategic thinking not quite. And I think if you've taken, or I encourage you to take our, what's our first course's name, John? Our Thinking Like an Analyst course, you'll notice that this is actually what we call the analytics trifecta. And it's what separates a good analyst from a great one. And if your project portfolio highlights this, it's what separates a good portfolio from a great one as well. So I'll continue to kind of touch on these 3 points as I talk about the different elements, but it's important to kind of state them right off the bat and keep them in mind. Another thing that I think is important to call out is just that a great portfolio should highlight your business acumen. And I think in particular, when you're trying to land a new job in maybe a new industry, it's important to try to find industry related projects so that you can show that you already have some of that acumen that's required to step into a role, not just as someone that's using Excel or Power BI, but applying it to the scenarios that your employers will be looking for you to apply them in. So business acumen is very important. And finally, and I think this can seem less important, but I think it's just as important as everything else, just show that you've got a passion for analytics, that you like what you want to be doing for a living, and that you're just fun to be around, because that ultimately they're hiring you as the person and not just, your hands for your typing on the computer, So show this passion, and I think you'll be well on your way. So with that said, and I actually love these 5 points because I think they mirror bullet points that people actually put on their resume, literally. Oh, what are my key characteristics? I've got technical proficiency, I've got strategic thinking, I've got communication skills, business acumen, and passion for analytics. And that's all the resume could do for you, right? But let's take a look at 2 resumes actually as an example, and try to see if we were an employer, which one of these 2 people we'd hire. Would we hire John or would we hire Stacy? And if we just start with the skills, which is at the top here, you'll see that we've got some SQL here, got some Excel, Power BI, SQL again, Tableau. So maybe there's some difference between Tableau and then Python and R here. But beyond that, you don't really know much else about them beyond their actual experience. But what if we compare them now? Well, now and you can literally see, okay, so Stacy's definitely got some Excel chops. I can see her projects here. From her credentials, it looks like she's also taken some Power BI courses as well. So I know that she at least has some working knowledge of that. It gives me more context than just saying, hey, I know Power BI, because anyone can do that, but not everyone can earn these credentials. Not everyone can put these projects together. And I think another thing that's important to call out here, especially when you start to compare, portfolios and resumes, as an employer that's looking to hire, you're going to look at hundreds of resumes, right? So you're really, the 5-6 seconds that I just spent comparing these 2 is literally all the time that you're going to get as well. So how do you differentiate yourself? You really can't, right? But by having a project portfolio, you can. And now you might be asking, well, if I just put 2 portfolios side by side, we can ask the same question, right? They're not going to spend more than 6 seconds looking at it. So how do I differentiate myself? And I think what I need to bring up here that rarely does get brought up is, and I've already kind of said it, putting this together, what you see on Stacy's portfolio here is extremely hard work, and much more so than putting together a resume. So what that means is that for the 200 people that are applying that are definitely going to have resumes, I can guarantee that not all 200, probably not even half or a quarter of those, will have a project portfolio. So just putting in the time and effort to do that, again, will already start to differentiate you from the competition. Not just when you can compare this way, but just showing that you've done and put in the work kind of takes you that extra mile. And finally, let's take a look at actually one of Stacy's projects here as a sneak peek. Now you definitely know that she's got some talent. And this is where some of that, not just technical proficiency, but strategic thinking and communication skills get put into play here. And now you know that, yeah, she's a killer analyst. So that's just a quick example there. Now, hopefully I've convinced you that you do need to put together a portfolio for yourself as an analyst, but how do you actually go about doing that? In the past, this was very hard. What we'd always suggest, I think people would use a combination of LinkedIn, Some would put together a personal website. They'd use some combination of, Tableau Public or anything like that. And there are some options for building and managing portfolios. But ideally, you want to look for a solution that meets these criteria. So it needs to be easily shareable. Otherwise, what good is it for you? It needs to be clear and consumable. So once you share it, people can actually take a proper look at it. It needs to be publicly accessible, easy for you to manage and put together. And finally, free and at least cheap to host. But you probably want to be looking at a free solution here. And the good news here, and you might already see this coming, is that these criteria is what we put together and what we considered to put together our Maven Analytics Showcase, which really is just a project portfolio specifically made for data analysts. So we created this purpose-built platform for data professionals to showcase their work, share projects with their peers and employers, and then just connect with top analytics talent across the world. And why we love it? Well, it's because of those same reasons that I just mentioned, right? Easily shareable, clear and consumable, publicly accessible, easy to build and manage, and it's completely free to create and to host. I know the platform is free for everyone right now as far as courses and some other stuff, but this is always free. You can always just put together your portfolio on our site and host it and share it with anyone you want. And I know this kind of feels like a shameless plug that we're just kind of selling our product here, but I honestly wouldn't be saying this if I didn't truly believe that this was the best solution out there for you to put together your portfolio as an analyst. So that's that's how you host your portfolio, right? You know you need one, you know where to host it. Now, how do you do it in a way that is actually effective and gets you closer to that job? Well, let's take a look at the keys to a successful portfolio. And similar to what I was talking about with the resumes, in that you don't have a lot of time to make an impression, I think the same thing stands for what project portfolio is, from at face value or from the top without jumping into any projects yet. So I want to highlight the keys to putting those elements together thoughtfully to put yourself in the best position for success. So number one, I said key there, but it's keep your about section brief and original. So this is going to be your first hook. It's the first thing that people are going to read. And it can be used to display one of those points, which is your passion for analytics, as well as your communication skills. It's very easy to put together, a few paragraphs about yourself. It's a lot harder to be concise, and your ability to be concise will start to pay off those communication skills as well. I want to show you a quick example of that. I keep going back to Stacy, but I love her portfolio. So about Stacy, you can see, self-proclaimed data mom who feels a relaxing weekend can include analyzing your kid's Lego collection, passionate about all things data, and try to share that enthusiasm in my own work and with others. So right off the bat, she's got a great way with words. You can tell that her passion for data shines through here. She's even stating it. I think anyone that wants to spend their weekends analyzing data is someone that loves doing that, even if it's not for a living. And it looks like someone that's fun to work with. And in this case, I can confirm that, Stacy is a joy to work with. Number two, take advantage of the header image real estate. This is something that can be overlooked as well, because it's just something that, there's a default option, just put it in there. It's not part of your project. It's not part of the about yourself section, but it's there and it's at the top of your page. And anyone looking at their portfolio will glance at this, whether they intend to or not. So just take advantage of it, Try to add a little bit more information about yourself, like your certifications or your credentials. And I think a good example of that is Gerard's here. You can see that he's got his name again. He's got some key points that he wants to tell you about himself, about data storytelling, visualization, and analytics. And then you can see his Microsoft Excel credentials, his Power BI credentials, and then some of his Maven certificates. You can see that he's won a couple of challenges and he's part of the Hall of Fame. So that already tells you a little bit more about himself than just having some default stock picture or anything like that. And finally, number three, use engaging project titles and excerpts. I keep messing up with my spelling here, but that's okay. You can't, remember, like with your resume, people won't spend a lot of time on your project page or on your portfolio page unless you somehow keep them there, right? And I know I talk a lot about how your project portfolio should highlight, technical proficiency and communication skills and strategic thinking, but you can't pay all of that off in just a few seconds that they're looking just at your main portfolio page. So what you can do with that time is just get them interested enough to actually click into their projects, because that's where you're really going to pay off everything else that you want them to know about you as an analyst. So these three elements, I think, are what get you passing. I think, John, you talk about like the 6-second rule with resumes. I think if you do these right, You'll get them people stopping on your portfolio page. They won't jump to the next one. And if you're lucky, and if you're doing everything right, you will be, they'll click into your projects. And that's where you can really bring everything home. So let's talk about that. Oh, and an example of a good one here, I love Mark's. He's another challenge winner. Well, I think Stacy, Gerard, and Mark are all challenge winners, in fact, and I'll discuss that a bit later as well. But I love his, you see first, powering up my resume with Power BI and the Force. He made a resume in Power BI, which does a lot of good things. And he even tweaked it so you can toggle it between Star Wars mode on and off. And that actually landed him his job. It ended up being the case that the hiring manager that was interviewing him was a huge Star Wars fan, and this completely got him sold on him. But even the other ones, Maven Airlines, the world's most prestigious airline. But is it? Just creating that kind of doubt gets you hooked and wants you to click into the project to see what's next. Same thing here with Harry Potter. Who really was the hero of the Harry Potter story? I'm a big Harry Potter fan. I actually loved his entry. And just, those small sentences can really get you wanting to look at the project a little bit deeper. So now let's take a look at the elements of a winning project. So you need a portfolio, you're hosting it now, you're making sure your landing page is getting people, clicking into your projects. Now it's time for the important thing, right? And this is where you actually highlight those elements about, technical proficiency, strategic thinking, and communication skills. So how do we do that? Because it's one thing to just do a great project, right? And it's another thing completely to present it in a way that's effective and that anyone can understand that it is in fact a great project. I'd even argue that a bad project presented well is more effective in this scenario than a good project that's presented poorly as part of a project in your portfolio. So let's get them all presented well here. So a great portfolio project should be clear and easily consumable and guide the viewer through your thought process and approach. And this is kind of the framework that I'll cover. So start with a business case, show your insights and impact, use data to tell your story, and provide some technical depth, which can also be broken down into these 4 questions. So let's go into the first one, which is to start with the business case. Now, you want to be careful here with your first, let's say, sentences as part of your project, because you will or may you lose your audience if you dive just straight into the technical stuff. So you want to lead with the high-level context and just include a description of the business case and the problem you solve. You want to set the stage for what's to come so that they have the proper context to understand everything properly. So here are some examples, but I think the most important and the pro tip here is that you want to lead with the business context because you're trying to speak the language of potential employers and keep those non-technical audiences engaged. These projects in your portfolio aren't just for you to flex to your analyst friends. That's not the point here. The point is to communicate these technical projects in a non-technical way so that anyone can understand them, because most likely the person that's going to be hiring you isn't an analyst themselves. So you want to speak to that persona. Step number 2, show your insights and impact. So now that they know the context, it's time to talk about the insights you derived in your analysis and the impact that they drove for the business. So you want to start with, you set the stage, where did you start and where did you end? Here are some examples for that as well. And a quick pro tip, if you can, and this can sometimes be hard, but include tangible, measurable results whenever possible, just so you can literally quantify the impact of your analysis. And so there's some sort of way to, again, measure just how much this project helped the problem that you were trying to solve or how good the solution was. And after that, this is a longer part, use data to tell the story. So you've established the context, you have your point, your starting point and your ending point, time to connect those dots, right, through the process that you took when building this project. So you want to take it a level deeper and use data-driven storytelling to bring your analysis to life. And I think this is where that strategic thinking really comes, into play here. This is where it's not so much about, trying to explain every single little detail that you took or, how I used this formula and it works this way. That's not the point. It's just about expressing that you are able to approach problems the right way, can come up with ideas for solutions, and are able to execute on those ideas to get to where you want to get. So what you want to do in this stage is just use data visualization whenever possible. You don't want to include, raw code or tables or just long paragraphs of text. Use data and visualization to actually help you tell that story, but only focus on the data that actually supports the business case and the outcome. You don't need to, include any peripheral analysis that you conducted, however good it may have been, if it isn't paying off the point that you kind of set up to begin with. And finally, take this as an opportunity to showcase your written and visual communication skills. Remember, this is very important. And just focus on telling a clear and logical story. What you don't want to do is, again, go deep into the technical weeds, at least not yet. There will be a time for that. Or again, try to include everything. I know it can be tempting because you put maybe a lot of work into this project and you want everyone to see everything you did. But that will most likely just be counterproductive. So just focus on the main ideas, everything that just shows how you got from the problem you were trying to solve to the solution you came to is really all you need to include. And finally, just be careful. Don't be like me and write poorly or make careless spelling or grammatical errors, because that it's a bit unprofessional. You still want to keep that same way you do with your resumes or your LinkedIn profiles. And finally, now if you want to, now that they've if they want to have completed your project and gotten everything they wanted out of it, now you can provide some technical depth for anyone that wants it. So portfolio projects should be designed to appeal to a broad audience, but they can, and sometimes should, include links or deep dives specifically tailored to those looking for more technical depth. So some examples here are just downloadable, maybe Excel workbooks or project files, some code samples or GitHub links. You can embed public Power BI or Tableau dashboards onto your portfolio projects. Or just maybe you have some sort of longer form blog post or some technical tutorial on YouTube that you put together showing how you built your project. This is a great way to include a link to that so that whoever wants it can go there, but so that you don't want it to be a necessity so that someone understands your project. This is just a nice to have for anyone that wants to go kind of that step deeper and get maybe like a behind the scenes look at your project, but not the main thing. So again, pro tip, the key is to make the details available just to those who want it, like a fellow analyst, without overwhelming those who don't, like a recruiter or a hiring manager, who ultimately, it's who the portfolio is for. So now you might be thinking, well, this is all great, but I don't have any projects. Maybe I've never worked as an analyst, so I can't do this until I start to work. I'm sorry to tell you that's no excuse whatsoever. If you don't have any professional analytics experience or any projects to showcase yet, there are a ton of ways to find projects to start putting in your portfolio. So you'll see number one, we've got course projects. You've got free access this week. You'll be completing projects as part of the courses here at Maven. They're all hands-on and project-based, so just use those. Use those or create your own, give your own spin to the projects on courses to just start getting those projects together and start building a portfolio. Now, a common question that we get here is, well, does that really count as my own project? Because it's something that ultimately the strategic thinking was in the hands of the instructor, because they're the ones that kind of laced everything together. And I think while I understand that point, it would be the same thing as saying, well, I cooked this amazing meal, but since I followed a recipe that I can't say that it's that I cooked it, or I can't have anyone else eat it because they'll just think that I'm cheating them or somehow. But I don't think that's the case at all. If anything, granted, maybe you're not paying off your strategic thinking skills there, but at least you're putting, you're showcasing your technical proficiency, because in following those steps, just like a recipe, you're proving that at least you were able to execute. I don't think there's any shame in following a set of instructions. Not everyone can do that, so don't worry about that. I think it's a great starting point. But if you can, do try to give them your own spin and really focus on communicating the project well, because that is one thing that can differentiate you from other people that are putting the same course projects up in their portfolio. So that's one option. If you want to challenge yourself, no pun intended, a little bit more, we do have data challenges that you can participate in. We put these out monthly, and then we even do judging, and there's some prizes. But the good thing about these is that we won't walk you through the project itself, but we will provide some guidance into what you should be analyzing with that particular data set. So it comes with a real world prompt, so you can apply your skills, and then specifically, you can look for challenges that are in industries that you are maybe trying to work in, to start showing off some of that business acumen and start to put yourself in the shoes of the analyst that you're ultimately trying to be. So this is another great one. And finally, if you just want to go, all out and exploring there's a lot of public data resources out there. One of those is our data playground, which you can find on our site as well for free. Our challenges are driven by playground data sets, but there's a ton more on there that we've never used in challenges. And they'll come with recommended analyses as well that you can kind of use to kickstart your analysis. There's other sources you can look on Kaggle, data.world. There's another great site called Real World Fake Data, in which they put together fake data sets, but of real world, in real world business structures so that you can practice with. There's data.gov, and there's another great site that's called Our World in Data. These are all great resources that you can get your hands on data sets on, and then just start putting together some projects. So there's no excuse. There's plenty of resources out there, and anyone can start putting together their portfolio today. It's just putting in the hard work, right? But it's going to pay off in the end. So what are some key takeaways here? Number one, project portfolios are far and away the best way to prove your analytics skills. Employers ultimately want to see that you have what it takes to get the job done, and this is the best way to show that. Number two, find or create your own projects if you don't have job experience. Use those free online data sources to create your own projects, or you can even seek out real-world volunteer opportunities. There's a ton of nonprofits out there that have a ton of data, and they don't know what to do with it, and they can really use your help. So help each other out, help them with the analysis, and they'll help you with a great portfolio project. Next, use the Maven Analytics platform to build, host, and share your project portfolio. Again, it's free, it's publicly accessible, and we purposely built it for people like you to showcase their skills. And finally, make sure your communication skills and personality shine through. I think this is a really important one. There are still a lot of good portfolio projects out there, but ultimately, try to make this about yourself. So use it to showcase your strategic thinking and communication skills, and not just your Excel or Power BI chops. So this is a great one. And another suggestion I will have, if you're out there looking for data sets for projects, pick something that you're passionate about, because this is going to be hard work. You're going to have to put a lot of time into creating these projects. So doing it in something that you enjoy will just make it a better experience altogether. So that's my pitch. Next, I'll stop sharing so I can share again. I want to share some examples. I want to show you our showcase first, and then some examples of some killer portfolios that I think you can use for inspiration. And then I'll even show you my own just so I can criticize it a little bit, because I won't criticize anyone else's. Have there been any questions, John, that are worth addressing so far? I haven't been taking a look at the chat.
There's sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, there's a couple in here. Maybe it's a good point to pause for questions. I can take Jamie's question about SQL. That's one I get a lot. I think it's one that people kind of struggle with. So Jamie's question here is trying to show SQL skills in a portfolio. Like, what do we do it here? So first, I'll say that the wrong way to do it is just lead with dumping your SQL code, because while that is the thing you're trying to show off and it's the technical flex, it's also the fastest way to make someone not care about it, get bored. Like Enrique talked about, a lot of people who might be reviewing this project don't know SQL. So like seeing a long SQL code doesn't mean anything to them. And then even somebody like say you're trying to get my attention, I might not want to read your SQL code right off the bat, right? So it's like, it doesn't help with anybody. And it's the thing that people do because they're proud, they have these SQL skills, so they always throw it up at the front. So I think you still follow Enrique's formula. You lead with the business context. What's the problem you're solving? If you have a way to visualize your results, you can use Excel, you could use Power BI, you could use Tableau, whatever. Like, put together a visual that shows you can still tell the story. And then there you've hooked them in with the business problem. You've given them the eye candy, shown that you can do some data storytelling. Now you hit them with the impressive SQL script, because at that point they're invested. They know you have the other skills. And then when they see the technical flex of SQL, that's when you blow them out of the water, right? But if you do it in the other order, you'll lose everybody. So that's what I always tell folks. It's maybe not the most intuitive thing, but once you hear it, I think you'll get, it makes a lot of sense, and it's really effective. Great question here. Let's take this one. Enrique, do you have to approach a portfolio differently if you're looking to follow data science or data engineering track? What do you think about that, Enrique?
I don't think you should. I think it's just the projects that are going to be different. I'd still use the sort of portfolio landing page to at least indicate in some way that that's what you're shooting for. So anyone that lands on it knows, like, I'm looking for a data scientist. I know that this is someone that is one versus maybe this is an analyst, and I can just skip to the next one. So I think that's a good way to kind of show your intent in your landing page. But I think other than that, like in building the framework and putting everything together, the approach is the same. It's just the projects and the content themselves that are going to be different. But as far as the things to highlight as well, like the technical proficiency, you want to highlight that. Maybe it's just different tools, right? Strategic thinking, you want to highlight that as well. Maybe it's just different types of decisions or questions that you're asking and answering. Same with the communication skills. I think that's even more so also sometimes for a data scientist or a data engineer. It's important because those can be some more technical concepts than sometimes, data analysts. So you want to showcase that you can speak about those to people that don't understand them and get them to take the actions that you worked hard to get them to take, because those are the right data-driven ones.
Awesome. Yeah, let's do this other one. This is another good one. So is it as important to put together a portfolio if you've gone through the traditional education route? And if so, is it a good idea to use your coursework? What do you think about that, Enrique?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I'm assuming traditional education route, means going to college. Maybe it wasn't for data analysis. If it was, then showcase all of that. You probably have some projects from school. But if not, I'm an industrial engineer. I never did any data analysis projects myself when I was in college. So yeah, what I use for mine are based on the courseware that I took, which actually ended up being Chris Dutton's the Power Query Excel course was the first one I ever took. So I think it's always a good idea because ultimately it shows that you're putting in time to learn these things that you're saying that you're proficient at, So I don't think there's any harm in that.
Yeah, I don't think background changes anything. I think it's still the best way to show folks that you can actually do the job and some of the projects that you've done. So absolutely, totally agree. And then let's go. There's a couple more here. Then I'll let you get back on track, Enrique. Would you recommend including a link to a brief presentation deck for each project, which communicates the insight's impact to the potential audience? What do you think about that one, Enrique?
I'd say no, unless you're also including. Well, let me restart. Definitely include everything that you're planning to put in that presentation deck in the project itself, because that's the most important thing, I think. Now, if you also want to showcase the fact that you can put great presentations together, then why not? I think you can link out to something that has the same content, but maybe structured in a way which is how you'd present it literally in front of someone else. I think that can have value. But if you're only linking out because you're not including it in the project itself, then I think that would be a mistake.
Yep. Yeah. Try to get it in there if you can. I'll take this one because I love. I keep saying one more, Enrique, but what would be the best way to anonymize data that you're using in a portfolio if it's from your current company and you want to use it anyway? So this is a really good question. We get this one a lot from folks. First, thank you, Javier, for asking it. First of all, do not use your employer's proprietary data and work you've done for your employer if you don't think you have permission to do it. So first of all, you might think it's an impressive project. Me as a hiring manager, if you showed me that work and it's obvious that it came from your previous employer, it's not going to take me too long to figure out that you took company data and you're now sharing it publicly. That is not going to impress me as a hiring manager, right? That's going to be the biggest red flag. So definitely don't just do that. That said, this is your domain where you have a lot of expertise. You do want to be able to show those types of projects. So there's a couple ways that you could do it. You could make your own sort of fictitious data. You could construct it, put some assumptions into it, and say, hey, here's a data set that I made. It is not my employer's data, but it's similar to the type of analysis that I do for work. So there's a little bit of effort there. And then the other piece is Enrique shared some resources where you can go and find some great data sets. The two that I would recommend are Kaggle and data.world because they're just these massive searchable repositories. And so say you work as a retail analyst or you work as a supply chain analyst, you can start going and searching for data sets that are similar to your job and do some of the things that you would do on your job. But absolutely the number one piece of advice is do not just take work that you've done for an employer and get yourself in trouble, because the worst thing that will happen, or the best thing that will happen, is you won't get the job. The worst thing is you might actually get in trouble. You might get fired before you have a new job. So, yeah, really, really great question. Enrique, did you have more you wanted to get on to?
I just wanted to, share some of the showcase and some examples of good portfolios. And
yeah. Let's do that, and then we can jump back to questions at the end. So go, guys. Keep the questions coming, and we'll tackle those after Enrique shows a couple great examples.
All right. So here's the showcase itself. This is where you can explore, as it says, the world's top data analyst portfolios. If you want to know how to get here from our main site, just click on showcase, and then you're here. And then you can see everyone's projects. By default, it's going to be by trending. So these are the people that have gotten the most likes on their projects in the past 30 days, I believe. And then we've got a few, featured projects up here, which are just great examples of how to put these together. So I think just coming here for inspiration will do a ton for you. With this, in particular, this one from Yasmin, let me actually go into that one, is his challenge winning entry from the last challenge. And what I personally love about even being on this end of the challenge, not necessarily participating, is just by looking at the work that some of these people put together, you can learn so much and you can apply so many of these skills to your own work as well. So definitely look into these. Keep an eye on those featured projects. But most importantly, because it's one thing to see this and think, wow, this is really impressive. I'll never be able to do this. Maybe you just get some database ideas. But in just reading their approach and seeing how they think about the problem that we outlined and the way that they wanted to, solve it and how they went about actually solving it and executing on their ideas is just so insightful. And I think can help anyone not just learn to be a better analyst, but to help put some of these projects together themselves. So this is one great example. I think Gerard's portfolio is another great one as well, in that, again, it's got that great header image. He's got his about section. He's taken a ton of our courses, and he has tons of projects. I think pro tip as well for you guys out there, I think if there was some sort of rule of thumb of how many projects do I need, I'd say try to get at least 3 in there with some diversity. You can do one, fun project that's kind of just for yourself that does show that technical proficiency, but maybe not a lot of business acumen. I think that's okay. Try to get some industry specific ones in there, especially if they're on industries for jobs that you're trying to apply to. And then maybe another one that's just really solving a business problem, even if it has nothing to do with the industry that you're trying to apply for, because it just shows some flexibility and your ability to, solve tasks of many different manners. So this is another great one. I think Gerard, what he does really well, and I've got one of his pulled up here, you'll see that he's embedded his Power BI dashboard as well. I don't want to do any more of these shameless plugs, but you can. This is in the past. It's always been hard to share Power BI work because you need either a school account or a professional business account. But you can actually get one now through our site just by being a free user. Correct me if I'm wrong, John. And you can sign up for a free account for limited time as far as Power BI service goes. But the ability to embed these will remain. So that's a really good, nice to have. And again, what Gerard does really well is he follows that framework that I just talked about, right? You've got your project brief first. What does he want to do? He wants to build a top-level KPI dashboard for an executive team. Here's his approach. And then he kind of starts talking about how he went from point A to point B. So he's got some great stuff in here about linking out to more detailed technical content. You can see right here, he's got a LinkedIn post about his approach, and he goes into more detail into the data dictionary and creating the model relationships. So I think this is a great way to execute that, right? Anyone can read this and will if they're here. And then anyone that wants to just dive a little deeper can click into here, but you don't need to, and you still get the same out of his project. So another great example, check out all of his work. I think Marjolaine is another great one. You can see she's got a great header image as well, good about section, and a ton of projects. And I think she does, like Gerard, she does a great job. Let's just click into one here and just kind of walking you through her process, which is, once I jump into mine, you'll see that I don't do such a great job. And mostly, and I'll be honest, it's just it's hard and you have to put time in, right? And I know I keep echoing these points, but they're important because it does have a barrier of entry, I guess is what I'm trying to say, putting a portfolio together, which is something that resumes and just LinkedIn profiles don't anymore. Everyone is expected and does have them. So kind of passing that barrier just not just shows intent, but just, gets you this, right? Which if I'm reading it, just tells me so much more about you than anything else that a resume will ever tell you. So check out Marjolaine's work as well. She does a great job, I think. And I mean, look at this. She, like, as an analyst, you can learn a lot. And then I think maybe some of this is a little bit more technical, but sometimes you will have those technical hiring managers. And I think this is just gold. And now let's take a look at mine. Yeah, because I want to criticize some things about this one, just for helping people out. So you'll see I've got more of like a branded header image. I think that's fine. It includes some of my projects, but I think it could be better. It just feels maybe more of a design portfolio than an analyst one. I don't think it's bad by any means, and it's definitely not stock, but I think it can be better. For my about section, I just copied what my description is as an instructor on our site. Granted, we put some thought behind that, but the purpose for that was to sell me as a teacher. And here you want to sell yourself as an analyst. I don't think it's bad, but what the problem with it is that I didn't put any time and effort into actually writing it again. And I know I keep echoing this, but it does pay off. So when I revisit this, this is where I think where I want to focus on first that will get me the most bang for the buck. Other than that, some tips that I can give you that I've tried to apply in my own. This little main image for your project can be a little challenging. If your dashboard does have this, I think it's a standard like computer aspect ratio, then just include it as is. But sometimes maybe you have those vertical reports and trying to just include that as the main image can work inside of a project. You'll see Marjolein does the same thing. You want to kind of do, this is a good one of the full dashboard working well. But if it doesn't, what I tried to do is pay off a bunch of different things. So show what the final product is, and then also kind of just show the tools that I'm using as part of that project, which in this case was Python. I used a little bit of ChatGPT and Excel. And as far as the little excerpts of the briefs here, I tried to keep mine just as one sentence to pay them off. Maybe they're not as clever or engaging, I'd say, as Mark's. But that was my intent here, just to kind of do a brief description of what you'd be looking at if you take a look at one of these projects. This is my personal favorite, using ChatGPT to find the closest spot to every pizza cart in Manhattan. And it's also my favorite project because it was a passion project. Again, this is part of Makeover Monday. I'm a big fan. That's another thing I recommend, by the way. Let me actually click into that. They add a lot of data sets. And this is great for inspiration because they share a data set that they found in the wild. So a lot of the times it's not very good. And it's an opportunity for you to start off of something and then rebuild it. So you don't have to come up with all the ideas yourself from scratch. But I'm getting a little bit off topic here. So this was a Makeover Monday project that I'm a huge pizza fan. So this was very close to my heart. And it turned out that someone documented every pizza slice they ate in an 8-year period in New York City. So I thought, wow, you're my hero. And two, I just, like, the analyst in me was like, I'm trying to find the closest spot to all of these pizza carts because that's where I want to live someday. So yeah, I'm trying to document, trying to use a lot. The point in this one, just to highlight, the passion for analytics and just problem solving skills in my search for paradise using ChatGPT, because I don't know a lot of Python, but I figured that was maybe the best way to solve it. And I actually was able to, and I'm pretty proud. And at the end, you just want to put your little own story selling spin on it. And I just kind of made this little newspaper article. So again, as you can tell, I love talking about this. Make it so that you want to love talking about your projects when you build them out, and make sure that when you do tell that story, you put a lot of time and effort into making sure it's clear and accessible to anyone. Because I didn't talk about any of the Python code here, and that yet you can tell that this was good analyst work, I hope. But yeah, those were my 45 minutes. I encourage you to take a look at the showcase, take a look at a lot of examples, and just speak around, because there's a lot you can learn from just watching other people's work. And that'll just really help you kickstart your own projects. You can even use some of the data that they used and give your own spin on things, which is great.
Yeah, fantastic session here, Enrique. I think probably everybody who is seeing this now understands the importance of putting together a portfolio to bring their work to life, and also has a really good framework for how to put a project together where to host it for free. So there's really no excuse other than putting in the work, practicing those skills, and then putting them on display. I think we've got a couple minutes we can run over. It'd be great to take a couple of these questions. I can jump into this one. So should we share our portfolio to the hiring manager or share the resume? So usually it's like a hard requirement that you have to share the resume. I'm actually going to jump to Eric's question here, because I think basically he proposes what I would suggest is you could put a link to your portfolio on the resume. And then, so I think that's a great way to approach it. It's the best of both worlds. And then if that's if you're, applying through a website, a form, doing the auto apply stuff. Earlier today, Annie and Lauren talked about how beneficial it is when you're applying, not just to hit the easy apply on LinkedIn and be one of the 1,000 people, but if you can find somebody that you know within the organization and go through them. And in that case, that's where especially you can say, hey, here's my resume, but also please give the hiring manager a link to this project that's super relevant and shows the value that I could do specifically to your company. So I think especially if you're being smart and you're finding the right entry points, it's easier to do that. If not, I think exactly what Eric is suggesting, have a link on the resume, and that's a smart way to approach it. Let's see what other questions we've got here. We got a bunch of them. There's anything else we can answer for folks? I'm sure there's questions that we missed in the chat. It's been nice and busy in there, which I really appreciate.
There's one that from Robin. Is it an expectation now that you have to have a portfolio to get a job? Is your previous work experience not enough, or is it for entry-level jobs only? I'll defer to you on that one, John, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah.
I haven't hired anyone ever.
I think I tried to put that in the chat, but it's a good one to talk about on camera for everybody. So I would say it's helpful no matter where you are in your career. It's more helpful if you don't have any experience. Trying to show some projects that are really relevant to the job role is like the best substitute for experience doing it in the past. Like a hiring manager, they want to hire someone who has done the exact job that they're trying to fill. That's the hiring manager's dream. Sometimes for an entry level role, that's not going to happen, and they will as a backup take somebody who's done the work on their own, studying, doing projects in courses, or just through self-directed projects. And so for entry level, absolutely the most important. Still for a next level role like a senior analyst, it still really helps to market your skills. It's still so much better to show someone what you can do than to just tell them on a resume in words, hey, I analyze data, right? Versus, hey, here's a project where I analyzed this marketing data and these are the insights I found, and this was the business recommendation. And because of this, we were able to really juice the customer acquisition because I found these efficient pockets and these other inefficient pockets, right? Like just so much better. A resume is like, I say, it's like, it's like a note from your mom that says, yeah, John's good at whatever skills. The portfolio is actually proving it, So I think that's, show don't tell, exactly, Cian. Totally accurate. What other questions do folks have? Probably take like one or two more. Let's see. Yeah, so Donnelly, great question here. Can a portfolio make up for having zero job history or having jobs that have been completely unrelated? Enrique, what are your thoughts?
I think absolutely. I think if you do it right, what is the purpose of this whole show don't tell thing is ultimately everything that they should need, right? Especially if you can hit that business acumen piece as well, which is maybe what can be the hardest part about having zero history, particularly in the industry that is maybe new for you. That can be hard, but again, to John's point, you can find tons of data online on almost every industry, and I think just showing that you have, you know, how every job has their required skills. If you can show that you have those, even if you've never applied those professionally, I think it's okay, and it does make up for have zero job history or jobs that have been unrelated. Would it be best to have both? Absolutely, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's a strict requirement whatsoever, and I think that is what's so amazing about these project portfolios.
Awesome. Yeah, great question here from Mohammed. Said we don't have any other events right after this for today. We do. We've got the next one starting in 9 minutes. Unfortunately, Chris Dutton is down for the count, but we've got an amazing stand-in in Aaron Perry, who has done this on both sides of the interview table, and is going to give a really good session. So everybody, again, this is part of Open Campus for the next week. Everything on our website is free, every course we've ever made. So go to mavenanalytics.io, get your free account. You don't even have to put in a credit card. There's no catch. Just get learning. Start with thinking like an analyst. If you're not sure where to go, you'll fall in love. You'll see both Enrique and I on that course. But you know, if you have something that you're really looking to learn, like SQL, Excel, Power BI, Tableau, Python, we've got specialist paths for those, and everything is open until the end of October 31st. So so we hope you'll take advantage of that. And Enrique, thank you so much. This is maybe the most important thing that somebody needs to do when they are trying to break into a data career. And I think you just did a really good job of giving them that roadmap. So it's really going to help a lot of people. Thank you. Thank you very much for helping us out today.
Yeah, this was fun.
All right, everybody. We'll see you hopefully in about 7 minutes. Grab a bite to eat, hit the bathroom, get some coffee, and we'll be back at it for one more. Thanks.
See you, everyone.